that in the modern corporation, as Burrell and Means described it in the 1930s, ownership and control are divorced from one another, and that we need to put some serious thought into how we incentivize managers to do the right thing, to serve the interests of shareholders. And we also have to recognize that there are built-in market failures, built-in frictions, which occur because we cannot perfectly monitor the effort of managers, and because managers have shorter time horizons than the firm or its atomistic owners. There's been a vast amount of attention paid to these problems. The contracting problem over the past several decades. And by and large, economists have viewed this as a problem that's been solved. Show me a principal agent problem with a particular set of characteristics and a particular set of knowledge, information structures, and I think I know how to write down a solution to that problem, a recursive solution, which describes how best to incentivize managers. And yet, given that we think it's a solved problem, it hasn't disappeared as an issue of corporate governance. And of course, because the mechanisms of governance are very imperfect, there's a long way between the theory and the actuality of compensation. And there's enormous political pressure in the US, and the US Treasury, from the Federal Reserve, from the UK Financial Services Authority, to do something, whatever something is, about executive pay. Well, not surprisingly, it's the case that financial crises have a tendency to focus attention on compensation. So, what do we conclude from all of this? Well, the evidence is that CEO compensation is not broken per se. It's not obviously broken in the way it provides incentives to managers. It provides incentives that seem to be sensitive to the risk that managers take, that it has changed over time in ways that make it more efficient. Now you have to bear in mind that this is all talk about compensation in a world in which there's a great deal of sensitivity to the fact that the concentration of wealth in the US and the concentration of income in particular has gotten much more highly skewed over the past decade. So the top 1% of income earners in the US now pay a huge fraction of the taxes. They're now hold a larger fraction of the income than they have since 1929. That's the previous peak. And so a lot of the concern about CEO compensation has to be understood in the context of these larger concerns about the distribution of income and wealth in our economy, which has become very, very skewed. We also have to understand that most of the proposals for doing something about CEO compensation focus on the wrong thing. One of the things I've showed you is that over time, the value of salary and bonuses has not changed very much. That behavior hasn't gone haywire. It may have gone haywire at Merrill Lynch, and it may have gone haywire at a couple of other firms. But looking at the economy writ large, it's not as huge a problem as you might think. And all the proposals to cap executive pay are proposals that focus on salary and bonus, not on other aspects of CEO compensation. And over time, if you want the system to be more efficient, you want it to focus more on aligning the interests of the executives with the interests of the shareholders. And that's exactly what's been happening, at least in the decade and a half that's spanned by our data. So what's the role of what's the role of executive compensation in the financial crisis? It was huge at the lower levels of the firm. It's that which explained the concentration of risk on firms' balance sheets, and it's that concentration of risk which made the financial crisis so bad. What's the role of CEO compensation per se in the financial crisis? I would argue very little. Is it a problem that needs to be fixed? I think the only way to fix a problem like that is it's a corporate governance problem, and you have to address the corporate governance system, which is where decisions about compensation are made, and you have to make directors of public corporations more accountable for the decisions that they've made. But that's a legal question, and it's not one that we seem to have been willing to address in the 70 plus years since Hill versus whatever it is, the Supreme Court case. So with that, I'll stop and take questions. Thank you.